Hey everyone, me Kevin here. Donald Trump just pardoned Michael Flynn, and Donald Trump also phoned into a Pennsylvania state legislative hearing on election fraud. Donald Trump says there's no question he won the election. But what is going on with stimulus? There's currently a rumor floating around that Steve Mnuchin is ripping off the American people by taking $454 billion and hiding it out of reach of the next Treasury Secretary and out of reach of the president, who could have just signed an executive order and sent stimulus checks to everyone in America. Why would politicians do this? Because they hate us. Well, let's talk about that rumor and separate fact from fiction. And at the same time, what did the Federal Reserve just say about stimulus in their last Federal Reserve meeting? In this video, we'll go through all of this. Quick reminder, Black Friday is in just 2 days. That means the amazing coupon code for joining the courses on stocks, real estate, and building wealth with YouTube videos expires Friday in just 2 days. Use that coupon code down below and email me if you'd like to bundle up by sending an email to kevin@meetkevin.com. I also posted a great stock video this morning on the channel. Check that out too if you haven't yet. All right, on Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, let's talk about this. Last week, I explained that Treasury Secretary Mnuchin was removing $454 billion of control from the Federal Reserve because of these 5 CARES Act programs that are coming to an end at the end of the year. Treasury Secretary Mnuchin was asked, basically begged by the Federal Reserve to please extend these programs. Treasury Secretary Mnuchin said, "No thank you, give me the money back instead." Well, this morning, there came this rumor that's now floating around suggesting that Americans could have easily had access to this $454 billion. All Trump needed to do when the money was there was sign an executive order and people could get stimulus checks. Let's clean this mess up because it's bogus. Yes, $454 billion in lending power that the Fed had access to was removed. However, those lending programs were underutilized and the market did not really need those anymore. If you want a full explanation on what those 5 programs were and why it doesn't matter so much that they're gone right now, type into YouTube, Meet Kevin, Treasury Ends Bailout, and you'll get a complete explanation on each of those 5 programs and why they're not as great as they seem. Now, why they suck, well, politics, right? We could talk about that separately. But the fact is, what exists kind of sucks. More importantly, though, when the Treasury Department ends up getting their $454 billion back, could Donald Trump just sign an executive order, sending out stimulus checks, unemployment pay, and money to airline bailouts instantly via an executive order? This is a rumor that's now circulating. And this is the kind of information that leads to more divisiveness in our country. Well, to explain this, it's a little helpful to know some background. In August, Donald Trump said there are $400 billion sitting in an account that are not being used. We've got the money ready to go out and we could send stimulus checks, unemployment pay, and an airline bailout. We've got the money and we can make an argument that says we can send this money without Congress's approval. Well, Donald Trump looked into that. And unfortunately, the Treasury Department's attorneys said, no, Donald Trump, you cannot take $400 billion or $454 billion and just distribute it as checks, unemployment pay, and an airline bailout. As much as Donald Trump would have loved to do this, and certainly if he could, you can almost bet, I think we can all agree, he would have done this before the election. No duh there. But attorneys at the Treasury Department said it was not possible, and that entire option disappeared. It vanished. Now, there's this new argument being made that, well, Treasury Secretary Mnuchin might be getting this $454 billion back, but why is he putting it into the general fund, which makes it harder for the next Treasury Secretary to use it? Why doesn't he just put it into the Exchange Stabilization Fund, which is the only other place he can put it? Because that money is more usable and that could give us stimulus money sooner. No. So we got a lot of false information here. First, we now know, no, Donald Trump was not able to just sign a piece of paper and send stimulus checks. Again, if he could, you could pretty much guarantee any president would do that right before an election. Number 2, the money, this $454 billion going into the general fund versus the Exchange Stabilization Fund literally has nothing to do with stimulus. The only benefit of the money going into potentially the Exchange Stabilization Fund would literally be so that the Treasury Department could backstop further losses at the Federal Reserve. But the Federal Reserve isn't having issues right now. The market doesn't need that backstopping. In other words, it makes no difference where the $454 billion goes. So no, it's wrong. Donald Trump could not have just signed a piece of paper and sent out stimulus checks with this $400+ billion. And no, it doesn't really matter which account it goes into. Now, is it possible that Steve Mnuchin doesn't like the fact that he's losing his job and maybe he wants to make it harder for Janet Yellen because maybe he doesn't like her? Sure. Yes, that's possible. But the real reality is this $454 billion going back to the Treasury Department is actually a really good setup for stimulus negotiations. It actually makes it easier for us to get stimulus checks sooner, PPP loans sooner, and unemployment boosts again sooner. The reason for this is simple. When Congress finally, it's Congress who's the problem here, when Congress finally gets their act together and they negotiate a stimulus deal, they basically have a checking account that already has $454 billion in it. So if they want to do a $2 trillion bill, well, they've already got 454 there. They're already almost 25% of the way to that funding. That's the point. So if anybody's suggesting that this money's being robbed or Janet Yellen's job's going to be harder because of which account it went into, a lot of this is just sensationalized media to draw up support for a news channel or whatever and drum up anxiety in, well, viewers. Now, this doesn't mean that somebody else is wrong and I'm always right. I admit my mistakes on this channel. Those of you who watch and subscribe, thank you, and you know that. But I wanted to clear this up because I know it's something that's bothering a lot of us. I read the comments, I see what's going on, I see what's on your mind, and I really wanted to provide clarity on this. This whole Treasury thing, bottom line, it's good for stimulus. Let's talk a little bit more about stimulus now. Just a quick reminder to get your 4 free stocks with Webull. Link down below for Webull. You deposit $100. You open up a trading account with Webull. They give you 4 totally free stocks. They could be worth anywhere between $8 to $20 to $1,600. Most people are getting somewhere around $15 to $25, which is really cool because you literally do 5 minutes worth of work and you get compensated pretty well for doing that. And you get an awesome stock trading account. On stimulus, Joe Biden is pressuring Democrats to accept a smaller stimulus package, and he also says that a stimulus and relief package directly to Americans is a top priority as soon as he takes office, if he takes office. This comes as 26 million Americans do not have enough to eat. 1 in 6 families have hungry children, and thousands of cars wait outside of stadiums for food at these food distribution points. Also, remember, at the bottom of my description, there are links to maps and phone numbers that you can look into and call so that you can get free food for anyone who is 18 or younger. Keep that in mind. It's a great resource that is available through the end of the year. In additional news, the Federal Reserve released its minutes today from its last meeting. The Federal Reserve Board is considering ramping up its purchases of Treasury bonds and mortgage-backed securities to, quote, stimulate the economy. The Wall Street Journal Central Banks Service describes a boost in bond buying by the Fed as a way to stimulate the economy from the Fed. Now, while the Fed has not yet decided to increase the rate of their bond purchases, the discussion has come up. And if COVID further continues to weaken the market, the Fed may decide to ramp up their monetary stimulus. How does all that fancy talk end up affecting us, though? Well, it's not that great. Treasury bonds and mortgage-backed securities being bought at a higher rate by the Fed, aka them printing more money, increases prices on those bonds and helps push rates down. Okay, second part of fancy talk over. Simply put, interest rates will go down, which lead to lower mortgage rates, sometimes lower interest rates on credit cards and car loans, as well as lower rates for business borrowing. Unfortunately, those of us who are struggling will find it very difficult to get a loan right now. Instead, more bond buying by the Fed just really ends up serving to, well, prop up businesses, the stock market, and the real estate market even more. The Fed's hope, though, if Congress doesn't provide stimulus, maybe higher stock prices and higher real estate prices and easier borrowing will eventually trickle down to workers and people who actually need the support. This goes to show how frustrated the Fed is with Congress for not providing direct stimulus relief. New Mexico is also repurposing $330 million in virus aid that they receive directly from the federal government, and they will use this money to send $1,200 stimulus checks on their own to economically stressed workers, more unemployment pay, and will ramp up testing. This is New Mexico. On jobs, last week, we lost an additional 778,000 jobs, with 331,000 additional self-employed jobless claims. Remember, you have to add these numbers together. That means 1.1 million people have filed for their initial unemployment jobless claim in just the last week. That is well above the 1 million average we had been seeing. We even fell below 1 million with the combined figure for a period of time. And quite frankly, it's a sign that jobless claims are trending in the wrong direction. On COVID, the CDC expects to reduce mandatory quarantine timeframes after COVID exposure from 14 days to 7 days. This is what Sweden did early in this pandemic, and it's seen as a way to increase compliance. Most COVID cases can be caught and detected within this 7-day period, but 14 days tends to lead people just not to quarantine at all. That's the update for today. Make sure after this video to go check out the stock video I posted on Shift Technologies. Check that out. If you have Webull, you can still trade on that stock for 4 hours after the stock market closes. Keep that in mind. That's one of the benefits of having Webull. Make sure to get your life insurance and those 4 free stocks. Both of those links down below next to the Black Friday coupon code. And folks, there you have it. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.